and my shirt matches the wall. Good thing I noticed this right at the very end of filming. Welcome back. I just learned something interesting about the physics behind a certain food, and that gave me the idea to answer some questions you didn't know you had about the science of food. And we're gonna start with ketchup. Ketchup, as you know, is a liquid, but has some strange properties that aren't generally associated with most liquids we come into contact with every day. I'm sure everyone's experienced tipping the bottle over and not really having anything happen to the ketchup, not even a slow ooze starting to come out. Generally, at this point, we turn to hitting the ketchup bottle and then having more than we really intended flow out onto our plate. Why is this? Well, ketchup belongs to a class of fluids that exhibit properties of what's called shear thinning, which means that the viscosity decreases as the shear force on it increases. In layman's terms, at shallow angles it will pour like molasses or honey, while at steeper angles it starts to pour more like water. This doesn't really explain why you have to smack it at the start to get it moving in the first place. Well, this is because ketchup is in a special subset of those shear thinning fluids called Bingham plastic fluids, which means that at low stress it behaves like a solid, and there's a minimum shear force that needs to be applied called the yield force for things to actually start moving. In ketchup, this yield stress can be met by smacking the bottle. And number 2 on our list of food science, alcohol. When most people say alcohol, what they're talking about is ethanol, which is also known as grain alcohol. And this is the alcohol that you find in all the alcoholic drinks all over the world. Ethanol has a close relative, methanol. It's only missing 1 carbon, but is extremely toxic to humans. So what gives? In this case, it doesn't have to do with the alcohol itself. It has to do with what your body breaks it down into. Both methanol and methanol enter the liver and are broken down first by the alcohol dehydrogenase, which turns it into an aldehyde, and then by aldehyde dehydrogenase, which turns it into an acid. At this point, ethanol has been turned into acetic acid, while methanol has been turned into formic acid. Acetic acid can then be transformed into acetyl-CoA, which is used in the first step of the citric acid cycle, which is the cycle that makes things that your body needs to make energy. Formic acid, on the other hand, acts in a similar mechanism of cyanide, actually starving your cells of oxygen in what's called cellular asphyxiation. An amount as little as 10 milliliters of methanol can actually cause you to go permanently blind, while as 1 to 2 milliliters per kilogram of body weight can kill you. This is the stuff that they put into methylated spirits and denatured alcohol, kind of stuff you can get at the hardware store, to make it so that people can't just go out and buy all this to drink. And lastly, the science of capsaicin and methanol, the stuff that makes spicy food hot and mint taste cool. So you have these receptors in your body called transient receptor protein cation channels that respond to temperature, TRPV1 responding to heat, and TRPM8 responding to cold. You'll never guess what receptors capsaicin and menthol activate. That's right, as much as it feels like your face is melting when you eat something super spicy, no damage is actually being done, as it's basically tricking your brain into thinking there's something really hot in your mouth, when in reality, it was just the capsaicin. As far as the heat goes, you're fine. It's your body's overreaction to this perceived heat, the watery eyes and runny nose and possibly respiratory distress and usually later some gastric distress, that will really get you. As for menthol, it activates the cold receptors, making your brain think that there's something cold in your mouth. You can actually add a little bit of menthol to a not so cold drink and it will actually taste cold. Now if I only liked mint. Ugh. So with that, I'll conclude this first exploration into the science associated with food. Just another example of how understanding science can make your world a cooler or hotter place. See ya.